Train is one of the most difficult maps when it comes to positioning on the CT side. A lot of players at lower levels will struggle to consistently perform well on this map and often don't know how to efficiently defend the bomb sites. So let's have a look at Fnatic's youngster, Brollan, and see why he is one of the top rated players on Train. Without further ado, let's jump straight into the first example. In this round against Mousesports, we see Brollan use a default set of nades that consists of a high explosive nade towards main, which combined with a nade from Crims would deal a lot of damage to anyone quickly peeking or rushing A main. After that, he then uses a Molotov inside Popdog. These two nades would counter any aggressive pushes in the beginning of the round, and it buys Fnatic some extra time to get into the strong defensive positions. For Brollan, this means that he can now enter Popdog since he is usually the player for Fnatic defending this area of the map. One important observation in this instance is his crosshair placement. Normally, when you'll watch him play, he'll usually be aiming for the headshot height of the attacker's player models when they are standing up. However, from the moment he enters Popdog, you'll see him instantly adjust his crosshair placement and aim slightly lower than usual. The most likely reason for this is to pre-aim at the headshot height of a player model that is crouched. This way, if the attackers decide to drop down and crouch at the same time, then Brollan doesn't have to adjust his crosshair placement at all and can just quickly pull the trigger without any fuss. As we continue the round, we see that Robs decides to use his smoke that completely blocks off all the vision at the back of Popdog. Now let's think about it for a moment and try to put yourself in his shoes. What would you do in this situation? Would you stay inside the smoke and try to outreact your opponent once it starts to fade? Would you go and stand in front of the smoke next to the ladder? Well, Brollan's reflex in this situation is to quickly give himself an escape route by smoking off A main. This way, he can safely exit Popdog and reposition behind E-box or even rotate back to side if he would want to. However, in this round we see that Brollan actually decides to retake Popdog after he smoked main. A flash from his teammate comes in and he re-enters into Popdog and waits at the back of the smoke. This is where he catches Robs by surprise with his positioning and quickly takes him down. Robs probably expected that anyone who was playing in Popdog would have already left once that smoke had landed. And because of this, he didn't check the corners at the back of Pop. A nice mind game from Brollan, but also a small mistake from Robs to not check the corner before peeking towards E-box. What do you think Brollan will do next? Let's check it out. So by the time he takes down Robs, Brollan's good awareness and lightning quick reactions come into play. A nice kill onto Chris J allows him to reposition towards the front of Pop, and that's where he meets Karrigan and eventually takes him down. Overall, a rather explosive round where every fraction of a second could have made the difference. And this is exactly the sort of environment where Brollan seems to thrive. The high contested areas on maps where robotic aim and quick reactions are the main ingredients for success. Let's have a look at another round where he will play this Popdog position. This time, when arriving at connector, he first uses this Molotov that lands at the entrance of main, before crossing towards Pop. Note here that while he is running to Popdog, he turns his back towards the main position to make sure that he won't be blinded by any flashes that are flying over the roof. Once in Pop, he then uses this very aggressive angle at the bottom of the ladder to wait for the first contact. Robs goes for a quick jump peek and Brollan does actually manage to chunk half of his hit points because of this forward positioning. Shortly after this, once again, the quick trigger finger from Brollan gives him the advantage and gets him the kill onto Robs. This is where a Molotov from the attackers is used as it lands at the bottom of the ladder. The reflex from Brollan in this situation is to use his smoke that he puts inside the Molotov. This way it creates a small gap at the top of the smoke that allows him to see if anyone is coming down the ladder. This is just a small trick that might sometimes get you an easy frag if the enemies are not aware of this gap above the smoke. However, no luck in this round as Mousesports decide to not contest Popdog while the smoke is deployed. After the smoke faded, he then gets himself back into a forward angle and this time opts to position him next to these pipes on the right. I just quickly wanted to highlight this angle since I think this is a very strong position to play from. For the attacker's point of view, it's an uncomfortable angle to try and clear with guns as it will expose them a lot while peeking over the edge of the ladder gap. The only things that you need to be aware of in this position is that players will be able to wallbang you if they know that you are there. Or they might even chuck a nade which could deal a lot of damage too. It's not only because of good positioning and robotic aim that Brollan consistently tops the charts for his team. Also his game sense and his overall awareness of when to make a move seems to give him a lot of pressure around the map. We see that the timer is running down and Mousesports' chances are getting more limited. Brollan seems to be very aware of this and once the call comes in at 29 seconds that the attackers are executing at B, he will then climb up the ladder and pressure the flank at B. This is where he manages to take down one of the attackers, denying the attackers a bomb plant, winning Fnatic the round. Building good habits and having a structured approach to the game is often very efficient and will get you a lot of success. However, when competing at the highest level, every small mistake will be punished, as we see in the next round of that match against Mousesports. Once again, Brollan uses exactly the same sequence of events, including the Molotov at main, playing anti-flash while crossing, and then the forward positioning towards the bottom of ladder. However, based on that previous round we just saw, Robs now is prepared and counters that play from Brollan by instantly holding the angle from the top of the ladder. A quick adaptation from the Estonian player that shows us why it's so important to always make small changes to our game plan, to stay unpredictable and be hard to counter. The same goes for that example where he pushed to the top of ladder to get the flank onto the B execute. If you do it too often, players might be able to predict it and will make sure to have someone on the lookout for this play. So always be careful with those aggressive moves and try to read the situation to the best of your ability before making the decision of going for such a play. One quick trick that we can learn from Brollan in this example against 100 Thieves. Sometimes it might be a good decision to use a pop flash to retake the Popdog position. That's where this very fancy lineup could prove useful. Standing next to the A bomb site while aiming up at the edge of this wall allows him to throw a flashbang that flies through the glass window and it perfectly pops into the angle of Popdog. This way, Crims can watch the A main entrance while waiting for the flash before then peeking into Popdog to safely get control of this crucial part of the map. So we've seen a few examples where he managed to get into Popdog. From here, it gave him a lot of control to deal with the A executes, and it even opened up the opportunity to go for the flank once the B hits came in. However, what does he do when he doesn't get access to Popdog? One reason for this would be a bad spawn, or another reason could be very early aggression from the attackers. For example, this round, to begin with, he already didn't have a very good spawn, which would make it more difficult to safely cross through Popdog. So once the E-box smoke from the attackers comes in, he then instantly repositions himself and moves back to the side. Now I like this move because if we have a look at the situation on the minimap in this moment, we can see that there is not a lot of backup from his teammates in this forward position. At the same time, because of the default smokes that landed at E-box and Sandwich, attackers are now in a situation where they could walk up out of A main and get themselves into Olaf, Sandwich or even behind the red train or E-box. This way, that position from Brollan at E-box would leave him very exposed to multiple angles at once by the time that the smoke at E-box starts to fade. So instead, opting for that repositioning towards the bomb site itself seems to be the right call and will allow him to play more in sync with his teammates. Let's continue the round. So by the time the connector and bomb train smokes land, Brollan then instantly makes sure to molotov the exit of Popdog, and also uses a high explosive nade towards the entrance of A main. He still has a smoke left, which he uses in a clever way next to the bomb train. With this smoke deployed, he can now look over it, which gives him that element of surprise that could give him the edge to any attackers running out of Popdog or peeking from E-box. This time there was unfortunately nobody in these positions, but he does manage to take out Chris J as he pushed up Sandwich. The call comes in that Ivy is open, so he quickly switches his attention to old bomb train, but goes down nevertheless to a quick op shot from Karrigan. In round 28 against 100 Thieves, we see how Brollan quickly adapts to the inputs of information that he gets during the round. Once again, he uses that same molotov at the entrance of main, but this time, since the flashes are already popping outside, you can see that he instantly backs off and switches to a more defensive approach. He uses his flashbang next to E-box to try and prevent a rush from happening, before then actively repositioning towards Heaven, which gives him a different overview of the A execute. Now unfortunately it doesn't work out for him this time, since he gets quickly taken down by JKS, who pushed through the smoke at Sandwich, but I do like the idea of creating that different angle to deal with the A rush, as it might open up the round by catching someone off guard early on. Here's another example on how he sometimes reacts to those default smokes at A. A common strategy that Mousesports like to use quite regularly is to use these two smokes, one for E-box and one for Sandwich. With these two smokes in place, they deny a lot of information for the defenders, which they then use in a variety of ways to gain more map control. This is something I've already looked into in a bit more detail in one of the previous videos, so if you haven't seen that one yet and want to get some more insights or ideas for the T side of Train, I will leave a link to that video in the description. Now back to Brollan's POV. This time he decides to position himself behind that Sandwich smoke, and you can already tell by his crosshair placement that he is very aware of the possibility of anyone being behind the smoke. So he decides to spam through the smoke with a spray and connects with Karrigan, which results in taking him down without even seeing him. So that's another effective way to sometimes try and prevent that push from the enemies once the default smokes are being used. Another way to gain a lot of control on the CT side of train is by getting into the Olaf position. From here, defenders can often get 1 or 2 surprise kills, which will give them a good chance of winning that round. To do this, Fnatic have this flashbang lineup. Right after the flashbang pops, the player at Sandwich will then peek into Olaf and shoot anyone in this area. The effect of the flashbang is that it will blind anyone that pushed up into Olaf at the start of the round, and since it pops right above the blue train, it will be rather easy for the Sandwich defender to avoid. A support player who threw the flashbang from the back of side sometimes even uses a smoke lineup like this one to block off the back of A-main. With this smoke in place, that player who peeked into Olaf can now get even more map control by also clearing out the A-main area. Let's stay in this round where Brollan functioned as that support player for Kreas at the beginning of the round. After first clearing Olaf and flushing out the back of Popdog with a molly, they then decide to both walk up and clear Popdog together. Once again, we see that same crosshair placement that we discussed in the beginning of the video, where he aims slightly lower than usual to aim for the headshot height of the crouched player model. And as we can see, also in this example against FaZe Clan, Brollan decides to climb up the ladder the moment that they show signs of a B execute. Because none of the FaZe Clan players were holding for this flank, Brollan then ends up behind them, which makes it a very easy time to get that 2k that basically secures them the round win. Let's also have a look at how Brollan likes to play from the sandwich position and focus on some of the nades he uses to set himself up for success. In this round against 100 Thieves, we see that the default sandwich smoke lands by the time Brollan arrives at the bomb site. This time, Brollan decides to contest the sandwich area with the support of that flashbang from his teammate at the back of site. Once the flash pops, he quickly peeks into Olaf and gets rather lucky because Kratos' faction misses his op shot. This is good information though, so his reaction is to instantly use this smoke that will completely block off the entrance of A-main. At the same time, the counter molotov from A-main comes in, but since Grat slightly missed the lineup, the molotov bounced back and missed its mark. The reason why the smoke lineup from Brollan is so strong is because it allows him to get a lot of control in either Sandwich or even Olaf. He could sneak up behind the smoke and get himself into one of the sneaky angles close to main, but since he doesn't have anyone defending Popdog directly, he decides to play it a bit more safe and instead goes for the spray through the smoke. Fortunately for him, he manages to predict the positioning from Grad's faction onto the pallet, which results in a quick headshot kill. The other players inside main then use another molotov for that sandwich position, but Brollan is happy to just fall back into safety and choose a different position to defend from. This is where he then first holds Popdog before peeking towards main again from this angle. But unfortunately for Brollan, his shot towards Lias gets blocked by an invisible hitbox that denies him to get the kill, but luckily his quick reaction and robotic aim prove him useful once again as he quickly turns around and quickly bursts down JKM, who is peeking from Popdog. Here is a different way to deal with that AWPer in A-main. Once again the same molotov at the start of the round to prevent the rush from the attackers. Then, this time Brollan goes for that dry peek into main, which could be a bit risky, but as it does in this example, it will give a lot of information that he can then use to plan his next move. With this information that there is nobody looking towards the green train or hell angle, he then decides to go up on top of the blue train to create a different angle. Quickly pausing the round right here to mention that it is an important detail to have his teammate Crims inside Popdog. If this wasn't the case, then Brollan would have probably not pushed on top of the blue train as aggressively, since he could get shot from that angle on the left if any of the attackers managed to get inside Popdog. So always be aware about what angles you're exposing yourself to and use the minimap to see what angles your teammates are holding. I've chosen this example since it clearly shows one of the strengths of using this blue train to craft a different angle. Because once Brollan sneaks up more to the front of the train, he then spots the gun barrel of the AWP from Woxic. And due to the fact that Woxic is scoped in and also has a closer distance to the corner, he doesn't see Brollan in this instant, giving the sweet and easy time of taking him down. After getting that entry frag onto the AWPer, Brollan then decides to fall back into the safety of Sandwich, and once again uses that same smoke lineup to block the entrance of main. At the same time, JW goes down over at Ivy, which instantly signals to Brollan that he needs to shift his attention. That's where that smoke at the A main entrance comes in handy, since he can now more safely cross into this corner at hell. And here he managed to get a second frag onto Karrigan, due to a tiny gap in the smoke. Quickly a last example that follows up on that position on top of the blue train. This time he is once again sitting in this position while crouched. However, if we pay attention to the minimap, we see that this time he doesn't have any of his teammates inside Popdog. So taking this into account, this time he stays at the back of the blue train instead, and we see that he is very aware about the angles below him. Karrigan then goes for that sneaky push into Sandwich, but that's where Brollan's sneaky positioning gives him the high ground as he gets a jump onto Karrigan. He then falls back down and once again shows that routine of throwing the smoke at the entrance of main before taking down Robs, who pushed from Popdog. So there we have it. We have now seen many different examples on how Brollan defends the outside bomb site at train. We've had a look at techniques he uses to get more success, and we've seen some of the routines when it comes to early utility, and we have seen how he reacts to certain threats from the attackers. Hopefully some of these techniques are something that you haven't thought of before and may be a good addition for your own gameplay in the future. If you liked the video and want to see more of these breakdowns of specific players on certain maps, then feel free to leave a like or a comment so I know that you are enjoying this type of video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.